Dedicated to geeks and nerds, you're listening to Project I Radio, 24/7 Nerdgasm.
Bizzong.
Bizzong. Bizzong.
Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong.
Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong.
This is Bizzong, the bizarre and weird fiction podcast. With me, your host, Mr. Frank. Welcome back, Zongers. Back for another week. Hope you're all having a great time and you're in your car, or maybe you're having a workout, or maybe you're just sitting behind your desk listening to the latest episode of Bizzong. However you Bizzong, remember to do it responsibly, right? We all got to be safe. Practice safe zonging. Zongers, this week we have an author. He's also an editor, and he's just recently started dabbling in publishing. And also, he's from Australia. That's right. We got him all the way from down under. The one and only Mr. Kent Hill. Kent first came on the scene with Strange House Books and his book, Alien Smut Peddlers from the Future. And he's since worked with the likes of Riot Forge Studios. And he's also worked with J. Ellington Ashton Press, a press probably more notably known for doing horror. But they, too, are now sort of opening their doors to the idea of publishing the weird and bizarre. So good on them. He's also, like I just mentioned, started his own little publishing outfit. That's Kent Hill Publishing. And he's putting out series of books that are all movie-based, and as we'll find out, Kent Hill is a gigantic movie buff. So with that in mind, I present to you the one and only Mr. Kent Hill, all the way from Australia. I'd like to welcome to the Bizzong podcast from far, far away, or very close, depending on where you're listening, one Mr. Kent Hill.
Mr. Frank, how are you doing, sir?
Fantastic, and how are you?
I'm very good, mate. I'm fantastic. I got my glass of vodka here.
There we go. I got
and some onion rings, and we're ready to party.
This sounds like a party for sure. I got my little martini in front of me too, so we're doing all right.
Very good.
Now, Kent, I've been watching your career, so to speak. Did you come?
Okay.
I first saw you come onto the scene when you joined Strange House Books with your book Alien Smut Peddlers from Outer Space. Is that your first work?
Yes. Well, that was my literary birth, you might say. I've been writing for many years before that. Mainly screenplays. I was in the film business, or on the scratch and sniff end of the film business. For a long time. And towards the end, I had a lot of work that was sitting there, and a friend said to me, it would be a shame to waste all of these ideas. I guess I'll just let them die a dusty death on a shelf somewhere. Why not take the opportunity and convert some of these into books and get them out there that way? It's still storytelling, and you get to, with a book, basically write, direct, produce, star, edit, do everything yourself. And so I went out there and tried, of course, all across Australia first, all the publishers and agents and all that sort of thing. And was branded most of the time too high concept for their tastes. So I ventured afield and went to England first and tried some publishers there, and eventually made my way around to America, which I thought would be probably the most difficult because there's so many presses there and so many people trying to get into the different industries. So I really had that last on the list because I assumed that might be the most difficult. So I started sending things out to the likes of Eraserhead and all of the presses that were there, Rooster Republic and Bizarro Pulp, and Strange House was on the list. And I always send. I know it's it's part of the submission guidelines most of the time. They're not to send multiple submissions, but I always did because I wanted to show them that I was very keen to get some attention, or to at least to get them to read something. And so to Strange House, as it was my custom, I sent a lot of submissions. And then eventually it took about, I don't know, 3 months. 3 months turned into 6 months. And then I eventually got that fateful email saying, I didn't even read the bulk of it, I just read the last line that said, we would like to offer you a publishing contract. And thus we're here now, talking. And it was a little book, Alien Smut Peddlers from the Future. Who would have thought a 13-penis, multi-tentacled, pornographic, peddling alien would be my birth onto this scene, as it were.
Oh, I would believe that. And what was it that drew you to Bizarro in particular? Were you aware of Bizarro when you were searching for publishers in Australia and England?
I was aware of Bizarro. I had read some Bizarro books, and I listened to your interview with Kevin Strange, and I agree with Kevin that when I came across Bizarro, I thought it was very new and fresh and very exciting. Not stultified literary stuff. It was more like literary junk food, and I thought there was something exuberant about it, and I really wanted to get into that. And I thought, well, that's exciting. They don't seem to be bothered with convention or run parallels to anything else. They seem to be creating their own little universe out there somewhere. And I thought, although, I had people that said to me, the Bizarro fiction's rather like dolphin painting. But I thought, no, I think it's new. I think it's exciting, and I wanted to get in on that action, as they say.
Now, is that what you were writing for film? You were writing this kind of Bizarro already?
Oh no, I was trying very fervently to get into mainstream movies. I mean, of course, you have your film school wanks, your very artsy fartsy beginnings, and I was trying to get more into commercial fare. The closest I ever got, it's a story I've told before, was I sold I was asked to write a draft of an action film, which I got paid, probably the most I've ever got paid for writing before. It was around $7,000 at the time. It was quite a lot of money for me. To do a draft of an action film, this chappie that I met was owned a large scrap metal business, and he wanted to become an actor. So he went away and did all the courses and became as close to an actor as he was ever going to get. And he managed to get the ear of a couple of producers with this script of his. It was an action movie at the time titled Dead Reckoning. And, of course, I know there's quite a few films called Dead Reckoning. But eventually the title became Enemies Closer. And he had garnered the ear of these producers. And I believe at one point Philip Noyce, the director of Clear and Present Danger and Patriot Games, Blind Fury, other films like that, was tickled. His ear was tickled to some degree. And it was rather exciting. We got to do a bit of a recce on a US battleship and all sorts of things like that. But eventually I was lucky to get paid because one of the producers, or one of the co-producers, was then arrested for fraud. Turns out he'd been embezzling the production money. And so the picture was never made. It was closed down. So that was sort of the closest I ever got to having, a screen credit and validating myself with the Writers Guild, and getting my Writers Guild equity. Being on song with it, being part of the club. Sorry.
Is that still a desire of yours to work in film and get a screen credit?
Oh, certainly. I mean, even though Garrett Cook once described me as a straight-to-video pulpsmith, because straight-to-video films and B films are very much my oeuvre. And so a lot of the books that I write are very much that B-type fare, that Fred Olen Ray, Jim Wynorski, Roger Corman type fare. But I mean, of course, I would love to work in in the big leagues, in the mainstream, where all that ridiculous money is. So yeah.
Do you write your fiction sort of like as a movie in your head? Is that how that kind of plays out for you when you write?
Well, certainly my method has not changed from writing screenplays to writing books. I start off with basically bullet points or scene headings, and basically write all the scenes out that are going to be in the book, as I used to do in the film, and then basically fill those scenes in. Usually, having it bulleted out that way, you could move scenes around. Like you look at the structure of your story or the structure of your film, and you move scenes around. You say, "Oh no, that might work better over there," and that could be a good turning point, and that could be a good reversal towards the end because you want to keep people interested. And so I've just applied the same method to writing the books. I would write headings or chapter titles, and I thought, okay, that's a good heading for a chapter, and then just fill it in, basically. Just join the dots.
And it's been my experience listening to writers and interacting with writers that your typical fiction writer has they want to sometimes explore screenwriting, and they have a difficult time making that transaction. I guess they find the stripped down method of screenwriting real difficult to switch over to, but it also, on the same token, and on the flip side of that, it seems like screenwriters have a lot easier time switching over to full prose and fiction writing because they're able to build off of those skeletons that they do create.
Well, that's true. I mean, with screenwriting, you have to learn the economy of language. I still carry that over. I try not to ramble on, even though my wife will argue with me, saying that at times I do get a bit wordy, but that's probably a side effect of being able to have a lot more space to work with rather than just trying to write a nice, concise scene description and dialogue. So some of that carries on. Sometimes, yes, I do get a bit wordy here and there because I get carried away. But no, the transition was quite smooth. I still see the scenes, like I have to envision it to write it. I don't just sort of sit there and think of the words. I think more of the images, and then try and write down the images that I see in my head.
Now, after you put out Alien Smut Peddlers, your work takes on a decidedly movie Hollywood feel. You deal with barbarians and like the Jurassic Park type book you have, and of course you have these series of dedicated short story collections to B movies. Is that just your comfort zone? Like, Smut Peddlers stands out very distinct from the rest of your work, I feel.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was going after, with Smut Peddlers, I was going after this bizarro genre. I was trying to, I saw it as I've said, I saw it as a very fresh and vital new literary world. And so with Smut Peddlers, I thought, and because Smut Peddlers was rejected many times before it was published, one publisher said it wasn't bizarro enough. So I sat down and drank some Southern Comfort and said, okay, you want fucking weird, here we go. It became almost a challenge. I saw it as a duel, almost, as to craft this thing so it would be good enough for this bizarro crowd. Very tough to please. It was very different. It was a story that was in my head for a little while. Like the image, I listened relentlessly to Neil Young's Dead Man's Score while writing it. I still see it in my head as a black and white film with like Dead Man with Neil Young's score for that film. Magnificent score for the movie Dead Man. And I just saw this. I always wanted to write a Western. I love Western. So I thought a weird Western, although it didn't start off as a weird Western, it started off as a quite conventional Western. and then the elements just got stranger and stranger. The origins of it is I pitched it to a publisher in title only because I had not finished the work at that time. As often is my custom, I pitch things that I haven't finished, and usually they're the ones that say, oh, yes, oh, how quickly can you get it to us? And so then I have to write like a demon for a week or so and finish it, and then get it to them. Because I say, oh, look, it's finished, just polish it for you, and just give me a couple of days to polish it. Meanwhile, I disappear and write the thing because it's not done. And so yeah, that's how as you read it now, that's how it came about. It was a pitch. That publisher did not pick it up, by the way. They said they liked it, but they said it wasn't what they were looking for at that time. But Strange House liked it. They thought it was funny. Don Noble, who was with Strange House at that time, referred to me as the Shakespeare of poop jokes. Indeed, there's a lot of poop jokes in it. I love poop jokes. I think people shitting themselves is funny. I don't know what that says about me, but yeah. So they thought it was hilarious, and it fit what they were looking for at the time, which was trauma films and Japanese horror and all sorts of just a great mishmash of weirdness. And so I tried to create that with the book.
That was definitely a fun little book, and it was, very different from a lot of Bizarro at the time. So then you move on, post Alien Smut Peddlers, you move on to what I like to kind of say is your barbarian phase, where you had Deathmaster and you had The Last Barbarian. And that was like, you sort of moved back into, let's call it your comfort zone of movie-style storytelling?
Well, Deathmaster was something that had been, it's a project that I've felt for many years and finally realised it with the book that you've read. It was basically a response. It's dedicated in part to Jim Wynorski, who's a friend and whose films are a great influence on me. And I wanted, like he did, I remember seeing an interview with him talking about his first directorial outing, which was a film called Lost Empire. And he said, if I never get to make another film, I will put everything I want to see in a movie into this movie. And so Deathmaster was basically my embodiment of that theory. Like, if I never have another book published or get to publish another book, then I'm going to put everything I ever wanted into a book and a film into this book. So it's going to have sword fighting and magic and romance and comedy and a bit with a dog, and and try and get that all in there. So if I never get to come back, then I said everything I wanted to say. So that was the, and Deathmaster was a movie script before it was a book. So
the movie also sort of incorporated that
pretty much, yeah. I wanted to get everything I could.
Right.
All the things I wanted to see in a film in there. So if I never got to make another one, or if I never had the opportunity again, or someone chopped off both my hands and whatever, I'd never get to write one again. I'd said everything that I wanted to say.
Now, due to that, I mean, you had a little bit more writing, but you've sort of moved into editing anthologies after that, where you have your series of straight to video inspired short story collections. Is that is that because did you really blow your nut on that Deathmaster and you kind of did say everything you had to say, so you wanted to allow everybody else to step in and get into editing? Well, how did you make that transition? Well,
I over the course of the early writing days, I met quite a lot of wonderful authors who were incredible talents and had so many great stories. As you were talking about The Last Barbarian, I got to write with the wonderful Craig Mullins. People who haven't read him, get out there and read him. I believe he was in Strange House anthologies, and also is the author of the Reanimated States of America. He's a fantastic author. If you haven't read him, his Trent Gunner stories are fantastic. If you haven't read Craig Mullins, please do. I got a chance to write. Craig and I are both aficionados of sword and sorcery films, and so one day we decided, well, okay, let's write one, and make it very sort of pseudo Robert E. Howard. And so I said, well, I'll kick it off. I'll start. He said, have you ever written a book with someone before? I said, no. Have you? And he said, no. That's why I said, well, there's no rules. So I kicked it off, and then Craig wrote a bit, and it became very evident that was how it was going to go. I'd write a chapter, he'd write a chapter. And but then the problem was that Craig's tone is very different from mine. And I sort of thought, well, how can I? So I said, I'll tell you what, I hate to use the word polish, but I'll go back and I'll just change it a little bit to try and make the flow easier. And I did that, and he was very happy with what I did. So that's how we carried on. Like, I'd write a bit, he'd write one, I'd go back and rewrite his, write mine, go back, and that's how The Last Barbarian, which is was a wonderful experience to write with Craig and to write that book. It was sort of that again was like the Death Master for both of us, like putting everything we wanted to say into sort of a fantasy barbarian story. But getting back to your question, yes, straight to video was something that was kicking around in my head. I'd met all these great authors, and we all seemed to love the same types of cinema. And so I said, well, okay, what if we did an anthology which had everyone write their ultimate B-movie? And so I had the opportunity because by that time I was writing some short stories and poetry and things for anthologies at J. Ellington Ashton Press. And they gave me the opportunity to do this anthology if I could get enough people. And of course I had the writers that I knew, but many other great writers I met during this sort of over a year-long odyssey of putting the trilogy together. And so many came with wonderful, wonderful stories and wonderful ultimate B-movies of their own. So it was quite a venture.
Now you mentioned J. Ellington Press, and to me that they sort of evoke a horror sort of a vibe.
Yes, a lot of horror writers.
Yeah, they're also, what's been your experience? They're pretty open to Bizarro kind of stuff. Are they looking to get into that? What are they doing there?
I think they're looking to get into it. I have signed a contract for an exclusive ebook exclusive Bizarro ebook. They're doing a series of exclusive ebook Bizarro titles. They do have a Bizarro imprint, and I've got a book, an exclusive ebook coming out with them. That's another Bizarro story. It's kind of a David Lynchian road trippy, like if David Lynch directed a road trip fantasy movie, it would be in that vein. If David Lynch did The Wizard of Oz or something like that.
That's great, and that sounds good that they're willing to take the chance on the Bizarro stuff, because you don't see a lot of presses that don't get Bizarro really. Like, I don't want any part of that if it's even a little bit weird. So that's good on them for giving it a chance.
I believe that they have an imprint for it and that they're trying to build on that. It's just that most of their body of authors are horror writers and they're part of the Horrors Writers Association. And so they do a lot of horror. Horror's kind of their main staple, but they do have they are looking to branch out.
I wanted to apologize too. I skipped right over The Last Barbarian there, and
that's all right.
Craig Mullins is an exceptional writer, and you're right. His story, The Reanimated States of America, that was really, really good Lovecraftian storytelling modernized. I really liked that book and what he's done. And, I need to check out The Last Bar. I have it. I've just never checked it out. That came out at a time where I was doing another podcast and reviewing so many books that it was like my head was going to explode. I just couldn't. I was getting fed all these books I couldn't keep up with. I'll have to remember to keep up with that. Now, who else do you, besides Craig Mullins, have you worked with any other writers to collaborate with?
Not that I've written a book with. No, not that I've had a chance yet to write another book with. I'd like to. It was a good experience. Especially when both parties are so passionate about the subject matter. It's very easy to write someone. I mean, it helps that they're a very good writer as well, but it also helps that if they are equally as passionate about the subject matter, Yeah,
it is. I did a collaboration with a friend author, and it worked out rather well, and I was surprised because we were able to keep, like you said, you had to really find each other's voice to keep it sort of, flowing and not so...
Yeah, you have to keep the tone... I mean, it can't be absolutely seamless because it's two different voices.
Right.
But it worked out in our case because The Last Barbarian is essentially a chase. It's a character chasing another character. So one character is, of course, very different from the other, so that kind of helped with the blend because Craig was writing one character and I was writing The Last Barbarian. So his character was chasing me. So it worked to some points an advantage that he had that slightly different voice. But to make the overall sort of tone of the piece sound similar, that was the only point where I sort of went in and did a bit of restructuring there to make it all seamlessly as far as tone was concerned. Sorry.
So you had your straight to video series. There's 3 of those out. Am I correct?
That's right. Yes.
3 of those out there. It's weird because when I think straight to video, I think like 80s cheesy, teen movies. But you do hit on that almost trauma like aspect of those straight to video cheapo movies, and I love that kind of shitty cheap movie.
Yeah, well, me too. I mean, I love crap movies. I love bad movies, but good bad movies. I mean, there's crap movies, there's good bad movies, and there's just bloody awful movies. But I like those movies that most people just go, "Oh, well, that was crappy." It's not. They're gems in the junk. They really are. And I wanted people, that was the flavour that we were going for. And, it just became such an odyssey. Like, I thought, okay, I'll do one. I've never done this before. I'll do one and see how it goes. And it went very well. It was a lot of work. It was more work than I had anticipated because I also ended up writing a book called Sword Dude at the same time. Which I don't know if you know about. It's for Dinotox Ministries.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Dinotox. I'll be going to CrawlCon soon, but I didn't recognize that title.
Yeah, Sword Dude was Jordan sent me a message kind of out of the blue. He said, "Oh, you're the guy that likes Deathstalker too." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Look, I'd like you to write something like that for me." And I said, "Oh," he said, "Look, I do these limited edition chapbooks." And I said, "Oh, okay." And he said, "Do you have anything?" And I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "I've got this story that's been sort of kicking around in my head for a while. It's called Sword Dude. It's about 2 out of work barbarians that go on an adventure by mistake." And he said, "Good, write it." So I went away and yet again I pitched something that wasn't finished, so I had to go away and it took me a week, but I eventually fleshed it out and got it to him, and out it came.
Now, how did you like that experience of having like a limited edition chapbook where, like I said, I know Dinotox, and now I know why I didn't recognize it because it was a very limited edition run type of thing.
Yeah, no, it was good because it was nice in the respect that I don't know how other writers feel, but I was very humbled that he wanted me specifically. He said, "I want you to write something for me, and I want you to write this type of story," because he said, "I like these kind of films as well." And I was very honoured. I was very honoured and humbled when he sort of said, "Well, look, I'd like you to write this kind of story for me." And I said, "Well, okay, yeah," because I had the idea a long time. And the title, I like to make little posters, and I stick them in front of the desk, and I sit it there, and I had Sword Dudes stuck on the wall there for a long time. I thought I must get around to doing that, and the opportunity came along, and I got to do it, and it was great, and there have been some lovely reviews on Goodreads for it, people that have read it. So I think you can still get it on Lulu or whatever
cool.
It is. Yeah,
that must be it. Must be actually a little special too when people do discover it and read it, because it is such a limited edition, hard to find sort of thing. So even that must feel pretty good when people find it and talk about it.
Oh, sure. Well, one of my introduction to Joe Lansdale, one of my favourite authors, Joe R. Lansdale, was actually through a limited edition chat book of his story On the Far Side of the Cadillac Desert with Dead Folks. And I thought that title alone is fantastic. That title alone is better than some people's short stories. On the Far Side of the Cadillac Desert with Dead Folks. And I read that, and I thought, that's fantastic. And, of course, that led me to reading everything that Joe has done.
Yeah.
And he's a big influence on me. He was also a dedicated Alien Smut Peddlers to Joe Lansdale, because he was very much an influence.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So it was nice to be sort of in that thing that some person might find it eventually, or get passed on, might end up in a dusty sort of second-hand bookstore at some point and achieve a small portion of immortality that way.
It is a nice thought. It's a romantic thought, if nothing else.
It is. I mean, I don't know about yourself, but I've visited many of these second-hand bookstores, and you find these books of authors that maybe only published one book or two books way back when in a dusty old paperback for 50 cents. And here across oceans of time and the annals of history, this book has been picked up again and has new life for the time that you're reading it. So it's very, it's a very romantic immortality. But it'd be nice to think that in the future, some of these books might be discovered that way, and will live on for a little while longer.
Right, you can't do that with an ebook.
No.
Yeah, I got a lot of respect for Jordan's unique business model.
Yeah. No, he was very. He said, "Look," he said, I don't care how much money it makes. He said, I want to publish. I publish this because I like it." And I was like, "Oh, that's good." He said, I want to write something that you like." And I said, "Do you like it?" He said, "That's why I want to publish it, because that's what I like." So I said, "Well, that's good." I said, that's nice to hear. Occasionally, he said, "Probably I don't care if it makes a ton of money." He said, "I'm publishing it because I like it." And I said, "Well, that's good." And I said, "I'm glad you like it." It was nice to write it, and it was nice to be asked to write something. That's how I feel. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know how other authors feel, but when someone who publishes books asks you, "So I'd like you to write me a book," and I felt very humbled by that.
I'll bet. I can only imagine. I haven't experienced it. Now, moving on to what I've seen you have coming out recently. You have this Cinematic Awesomeness series.
The Cinema of Awesomeness, yes.
Cinema of Awesomeness. My apologies.
Yes. All right.
Is this? It looks like you're starting your own publishing venture. Is this what's going on?
Yes. Now, Kent Hill, author, publisher. Yes. I had the opportunity to get into it. The third straight-to-video book came out through me because that was a massive... The series was a massive task, but the third book alone was an odyssey unto itself. It is huge. I mean, it's over 500 pages. Has some of the continuing stories, because the idea was that in each book everyone would write the first film, and then they'd have the sequel, and the third one they'd have the third film. So there was a necessity because there were authors that had third parts to their story. Now, it was the author Nicholas Day who said to me on the initial straight-to-video, you should get someone to write the foreword. Someone, you know. And we were talking about the outlaw Vern, the film writer. And I said, well, I don't know. I said, I'll try and get in touch with him. So I got in touch with him, and I sent him some material. I said, would you be interested in writing the foreword for this? And he said, certainly. He said, it's fantastic. So he read some of it, and he wrote a nice foreword for it. And I thought, well, I better get a blurb, because, you know, professional books have blurbs by famous people in the back. So who better, I thought, than Fred Olin Ray, the director of Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, for the back. And I got in touch with Fred, and he said, oh, look, I'm just off to do a movie in New York, but send me what you've got. And he said, I'll try to get you something before I go. And he was very kind and generous and wrote us a little blurb for the back. So then the second book came along, and I thought, okay, well, I managed to do that for that one. Now I have to try and do it again. So I was already friends with Jim Wynorski, and I was trying to get Jim to write the foreword, but he was finishing up Shark and Saw Women's Prison Massacre, so he was unable to do it. But he said, I might be able to give you something at the back end of the book once I've finished. So I said, okay. I need someone to write the foreword. So I managed to get through to Sharknado. I'm a big Sharknado fan. Sharknado fans out there listening, I got in touch with Tony Ferretti, who directed the 3 films, and now he's working on the 4th film. And I said to Tony, I said, would you be interested? And he said, look, I'm editing it. At the time he was still cutting Sharknado 3. And he said, well, I'm editing. But he said, look, send me your material, and I'll try to do it in between while I've still got time while I'm editing. Because he said, once I go out and do the promotional stuff, I'll have no time. So I didn't hear from him for a couple of weeks, and the next minute it came, and he was very generous to give his time while I was editing. And oddly enough, that book came out around the same time as Sharknado 3, so it was very culturally relevant. So then the third book came along, and so I thought, well, I'll try and finish this off. I'll do the same again. So I knew quite a few filmmakers, and there was a few I got in touch with that I didn't know. And I was only looking for the same, one to write the foreword, maybe one for a blurb. But most of the ones that I reached out to all responded. Vernon Wells, the star of The Road Warrior. Albert Pune, the director of The Sword and the Sorcerer. Ed Neumeyer, the writer of RoboCop. Russell Mulcahy, who directed Highlander. Philip Mora, who directed The Howling 2 and 3. Richard Stanley, director of Hardware. Keith Vitale, star of Revenge of the Ninja. You know, I just kept reaching out, and they kept responding. So I thought, wow, we've got more here than just a foreword and a blurb. We could have like a commentary throughout the book, like a DVD commentary. We have a couple of stories, and we have a filmmaker talking about their take on the straight-to-video era, or the VHS era. And that project just blew up. Then it was huge. I thought, wow, we've got all these filmmakers with their little personal anecdotes. Richard Stanley's was fantastic. It took 6 months to get hold of Richard because he's a very jet-setting type character. He goes all around the place and getting different jobs. When I first spoke to him, he was in Japan. Then he was back in France. Then he was in Canada. And he said, I haven't forgotten him. It's saved on my laptop. Just keep annoying me. Don't let me forget. And lucky I didn't, because his piece in the book was fantastic. He talks not only about his early experiences with watching movies on video, but a little about his career, about life living in apartheid controlled South Africa. And it was phenomenal, as was Randall Frakes, the writer of Hell Comes to Frogtown, was very generous. He actually also said, it's not in the book, but he sent me a copy of the memo when he was actually told to stay away from the picture, you know, because he was so angry at the changes they were making. So the more producers get involved, the more cooks in the kitchen, it just spoils the broth. And so he actually sent me a copy of the memo of the day he said, you know, Randall Frakes is to stay away from the set and all that sort of stuff. So he was very wonderful bloke to talk to, and was also wrote a wonderful piece for the book. But so the Cinema of Real Awesomeness was really born of this straight-to-video project, because there was some stories in there. Kevin Candella's Weed Eaters, the wonderful Michael Knuckle, he's an author you're going to have to watch. He's a fantastic author with his story Black Tar. Don Noble, my wonderful friend Don Noble and his Trailer Trash Samurai. They had larger versions that they couldn't really fit into the anthologies because we had to have some type of semblance of a word limit. So they have done expanded versions of their stories, and so they're coming out as individual releases. In Kevin's The Complete Acropolis, he has all 6 Weed Eater stories. Michael has expanded Black Tar, and as has Don Noble expanded Trailer Trash Samurai. And myself getting a chance to do a little bit of writing again. For a change, we expanded my short story that was in the first one, Hercules with a Shotgun.
That sounds all really incredible, and it's just a project on a gigantic scale. The scope of it is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it just blew up. It started off like, I had a chance to do an anthology. This is good, and it came together really well. And then a lot of the authors said, well, why don't we do a second one? And we could write sequels to our films that we've written. And I said, okay. Well, we'll do another one. And then the second one came together really well. And I said, well, we should do a third one. We have to do a trilogy now. So, yeah, and like I said, the trilogy just exploded into something completely different because I had all these filmmakers interested in being a part of it. And I thought, well, how can I include... We can't have 13 forwards. So I thought, well, all of their pieces were very individual. So I thought, well, if we space them out like a commentary through the book. So you have a couple of stories, then you have a filmmaker sort of sounding off on the era of video and what it meant to them and their careers or their personal experiences with films on VHS. And that era, so yeah, it just grew and grew and grew. Like I said, the whole project was huge, but the third book was an odyssey unto itself.
And now they're expanding out even to their own standalone works.
Yeah. Now it's almost like Star Wars. Like you've got the initial films, and then you've got the spin-off films in between. So,
man, that's really awesome. Now that you have grabbed a foothold in publishing, what's the scene there in Australia since you first started hunting out publishers?
Well, there's not too many, and certainly not of the models like they are in the US. They're very few and far between, and they're very small. I mean, KHP is very, very small. It's me, myself, and I, and my laptop. We're small, but there's room for aggressive expansion. The scene here is very tiny.
And do you find you have to just market to the U.S. like you don't,
Sure. There was I couldn't get anyone to read any of my work initially. Because they kept floating this thing, you're too high concept. It was very similar to the film industry back when I was involved with it. Anything that was high concept was like, that's big budget. That's Americans do that better. We leave that to them. We need small, culturally relevant films. And I said, what, you mean a movie made in the backyard with a koala bear climbing up the tree or something? And I said, we used to have, if you watch, people listening, if you watch a film, it's called Not Quite Hollywood. It's a documentary about the era of Ozploitation films. We had a thriving exploitation cinema here in the 70s and early 80s, and it just disappeared because all of a sudden we had to be, or you know, the governing bodies said that we had to be more respectable. But we had a thriving exploitation cinema. And, I mean, let's face it, there would not be, you know, the post-apocalyptic action movies that there are in the world if it weren't for Mad Max and the Road Warrior. And we had this type of industry, and yet now it seems almost taboo. Like you want to make an exploitation movie, or you want to write a high concept genre book. It seems like it's a dirty word, and I just thought, well, it's terrible because there's a lot of people out there wanting to do it. I met two wonderful gentlemen at a convention that I was at in November last year that are trying to do. I don't know if you're familiar with the outlaw Ned Kelly, the guy who wore the big tin helmet on his head.
Sure.
They're trying to do a Ned Kelly versus zombies. It's Ned Kelly in a dystopian future where the zombies are intelligent zombies and they're basically formed government, and Ned Kelly leads the human resistance, and it's called the man called Ned, and it's a wonderful concept. The artist of the graphic novel they're trying to launch actually did the covers for the Cinema of Awesomeness series. His name's Zach Smith Cameron. He's a fabulous comic book artist. And they have to do all this independently. They're eventually probably going to do a crowd-funded thing to try and get their graphic novel off the ground, because the powers that be are not interested. Most comic books here are, or the Australian comic book industry is all a lot of self-funded and crowd-funded stuff, because the publishers that exist are only interested in the mainstream conventional fare, which is not all there is. It's almost like a supermarket catalogue. Like if we only lived by what's in the supermarket catalogue, you know, there are so many other things that you can buy. If it's not in the catalogue, we're trying to be convinced, I feel all the time, that if it's not in the catalogue, it doesn't exist. But it does exist. There are worlds within worlds, and there are alternatives, and the edge is still out there, and we have to keep pushing towards it.
It almost sounds like it's built into the culture, not to be creative and experimental. Is it that type of a situation?
No, I just think I think that it was. Let's face it. To keep a country governed and under control, you have to exert sort of rules and regulations. And I think that during that period where there was exploitation and experimentation in the cinema here, they saw it as being very out of control because, and let's face it, a lot of those filmmakers and a lot of that talent did disappear overseas because there was just nothing to hold them here. And it's still the case. Like I had to go to, I would have liked to have been published here, but I had to go where the love was, and the love was in the United States.
And have you ever had a chance to come over to the U.S.?
No, I'd like to. I'd like to very much. I'd like to go to some of these conventions and meet basically everyone that I've collaborated with practically. Because I need to owe them some of the money through Facebook, some of the money through emails, and I've had phone calls with a few of them, but I don't. Apart from that, we are physically strangers, but we work together, and I work with a lot of wonderful people, wonderful writers, wonderful artists. Gary McCluskey's one of them. Did all my early books. Brian LeBlanc, who's a master artist, he did Sword Dude, he did The Last Barbarian, he did the straight-to-video series. All the writers that I've been involved with, Candela, Noble, Carnuckle, Vaughan, I'm going to leave people out, Terry West, goodness, I should just get the book out and just read from the contents. But no, I've worked with so many wonderful people and wonderful artists and wonderful creative people. And it's I would like to eventually get over there and shake a couple of hands and buy a couple of beers because they've definitely earned it.
I mean, it's incredible to hear the network you've built, not only of writers, but of filmmakers also, and to get them all involved in these projects. It's a pretty incredible feat considering you're doing it from practically a lonely corner of the world, all things considered. That's
true. The lonely corner in a lonely room from the other side of the world. Yes, it's it hasn't been easy. Don't let me try and sell it to you as if it's been all wine and roses, because it hasn't. But it's definitely been it's a feat, and I'm very proud of all the books. I'm glad people are reading them, enjoying them. I'm happy that people even don't like them, because usually when they don't like them, they still have quite a lot to say. I was asked when I did a print interview for the Bizarro fans page. Melanie asked me to do a print interview for her Bizarro fans page, and one of the questions was, what's your favourite 1-star review? And I had this wonderful 1-star review for Smut Peddlers, and this person not only says what they hated about the book, but they go into quite detail about why they hated it. So that was it was great, because I love that extreme. Like, it still made her think enough to write such a massive review about why she didn't like it. Usually the ones that do like it is very short, like, oh, I love this, it's so funny and weird. But this was a massive review about why she didn't like it. So that was great. I love the extremes, like people either like it or they hate it.
It's fantastic when you can evoke emotion one way or another. I know, I'm fond of anything I read, I review. And some of my favorite reviews that I've written for myself are the 1-star reviews, where I'm just so wound up and ticked off that I have to go through these books. So I have fun with it. But it is. I think it's important, those 1-star reviews, to to be critical and to give your honest opinion. Obviously, not every book is for everybody.
I remember when I wrote. Sorry for cutting you off there. I remember when I did the book Zombie Park, and I don't know if it's my penchant to do these books like B-movies and have a very, very good cover. But when you actually watch the film or read the book, it's not quite as good as the cover. But Zombie Park was great. There was a review for that. This one person said, "Oh, I wish the cover was so enticing, and this guy's not funny at all. He's trying to be funny, but he can't." And it was great, because the gestation of Zombie Park was, I was sitting one day and I was trying to think of something to write next, because everyone was waiting for something after Deathmaster, and I looked over at the TV and there was 4 DVDs on the edge of the TV set, and it was Aliens, Predator, and Jurassic Park and Highlander. And so I thought, there you go, I'll try and mash all those into some sort of story. And that was basically, it was written in a couple of days, and these aren't, like I said, these aren't great literary masterpieces. They're literary junk food. So you shouldn't take them too seriously. You should just enjoy it and have a laugh. And if you don't think I'm funny, well, I apologize.
That's great. And unfortunately, I have to say we're already out of time. So that's a pretty good thought to end on,
Well, it's like John Carpenter said, they're my movies. You may like them, you may hate them, but they're my movies. And I just hope that people, if there's places in there to have fun, and if you have fun, and if you enjoy reading it, then my work is done.
There it is. Not everything has to be War and Peace.
No. Shit, no. I don't have the patience to sit and write that.
I don't have the patience to sit and read it. Kent Hill, I want to thank you very much for coming on Bizzong and talking to us from clear across the globe.
Thank you, Mr. Frank, and thank you, Zongers out there, for your attention.
There you go. Continued success in all you do. I can't wait to see all these new movie books you put out. Everything looks pretty exciting. I hope everybody gets a chance to check out all this great stuff Kent Hill is putting out. Thank you again for coming on Bizzong.
Thank you, sir.
So there he is, Zongers, Mr. Kent Hill. Very tenacious, very talented, and loving writer. He loves Bizarro, and he's dedicated to putting his brand of Ozploitation, I think, is what he brings to the world of Bizarro and weird fiction. So keep an eye out for Kent Hill and all his stuff. Zongers, next week, huge, big, giant name coming on the podcast. Big interview. Can't wait to unleash it on you. Until then, go visit patreon.com/Project iRadio and lend us some of your hard-earned dollars. We're working very hard here on the network to bring you the best, most highest quality programming for free. But, of course, we need your help to continue bringing the great shows that are already on the network and bring in more great shows to the network. I know you guys are loving everything that Project iRadio is putting out here. So if you could just give us $1, give us $2, give us $10, you'll get that great ebook subscription plan. My book, Scared Silly, is going to be part of it. If there's a reason to give $10, I don't know what other reason there is. Oh, yeah, there's people like Brian Keene, Jonathan Mayberry, Mark Tufo. They're all lending ebooks to the plan. All great writers. So please, if you can afford $10, or if you can just afford $1, you don't have to do it every month. Just a couple of months. Just give us $1. Whatever it is you're able to help out to keep these great podcasts out there for the world to hear. Zongers, until next week, don't forget to check out this great show on the Project iRadio Network.
Hi, this is Brian Keene. I'm an international best-selling, award-winning horror novelist and comic book writer.
No comment!
Sir, what about the ending to The Rising?
My stories have been turned into movies. I've even spoken inside CIA headquarters.
Pardon, no comment, don't you understand?
I've worked in this industry for 20 years and I know everybody. More importantly, I know where the bodies are buried. And now I'm telling you their location every week on the horror show.
You understand this?
Plus, we discuss the latest news in horror novels, movies, comics, and games, and interview the biggest names in the business.
This interview is over. No comment! The
Join us on the horror show Thursday nights at 7 p.m. only on Project iRadio.
Brian Keene was also unavailable for comment.
Buttercup of Doom on Project iRadio. I am your host, Kelly Owen. I'm just a girl who writes horror and thriller fiction, talks to bugs, jumps in puddles, and now hosts a weekly podcast full of opinions, advice, and a touch of gypsy wisdom, whether it's current affairs or social media nightmares. Join me, the Buttercup of Doom, Mondays on Project iRadio.